ASEAN is made up of 10 diverse markets, uniquely positioned at the heart of global trade routes. Home to a rapidly rising and affluent middle class, with one of the fastest growing digital landscapes, manufacturing hubs and abundant natural resources. ASEAN's strong fundamentals are driving its growth and resilience. With our knowledge and insights on local markets, Standard Chartered can help you accelerate your growth and navigate the complexities of each market. As you expand across ASEAN, we can support you with end-to-end solutions, streamlining processes across multiple jurisdictions, making it more efficient for you. We are leading on the ASEAN regional connectivity to integrate trade and payments in the region. To support the growing cashless ecosystem, we've digitized our cash management. From virtual accounts to a wide range of APIs, we've optimized digitization for your transaction and reporting needs. We are investing in fintech solutions and building new business models, creating efficiencies and better experiences for your customers. When it comes to working across ASEAN's supply chains to finance your imports, exports or inventory, and raising capital for your business, our award-winning capital market solutions are customized to your needs. As you expand outside your home market, our dynamic hedging offering helps your treasury team manage volatility, ensure price consistency, and deliver competitive margins. We're committed to promoting economic and social development in our markets. Our value and philosophy are embedded across our banking products and practices. With $75 billion committed towards sustainable development goals, we can help your business make a positive impact. ASEAN's future is bright. As your trusted banking partner, we are committed to supporting your growth ambitions, co-creating innovative and winning solutions with you. We are Standard Chartered. We are here for good.
Welcome everyone and hello. My name is Mandy Drury and I'm going to be guiding you through the webinar today. Indeed, thank you very much for joining Standard Chartered's ASEAN webinar series. Today's topic is Singapore, the gateway to ASEAN. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes I'd like to run through with you. First up, if you are logged into this webcast through your laptop, you will notice a slide bar on the bottom left of your screen that allows you to adjust the screen size of the presenter and the presentation slide. On the right-hand side, you will see a menu of icons and interactive features. Please note that your mic and video are automatically disabled for this webcast. If you're on your mobile devices, the icons are on the top right. The next icon enables you to communicate with the moderator for any technical assistance. Hopefully that won't happen, but you never know. And the next two icons let you cast your vote for our live poll. Make sure you listen out for that. And also to be able to type a question, because it's very important that you can get your questions heard. We'd love you to send in any questions that you have for our presenters, and they can answer them during the Q&A session towards the end of today's presentation. Without further ado, I would now like to kick things off by welcoming Patrick Lee, the CEO of Standard Chartered Singapore, to say a few words. Patrick, over to you.
Thank you, Amanda. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and to the audience dialing in from Europe, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the Singapore session of our ASEAN webinar series. As companies continue to forge a path to recovery and growth post the pandemic disruptions, many are looking to diversify their operations and supply chains to pursue new income streams. In a recent poll conducted at our virtual ASEAN Business Forum, Singapore emerged one of the top 4 preferred countries for global firms looking to diversify their supply chains. With its strategic connectivity and proximity to ASEAN Asian economies, Singapore has long been this preferred destination for operations looking to expand their business into ASEAN. It is ranked second among 190 economies for the ease of doing business, according to the World Bank. Last month, the Singapore Ministry of Trade and Industry released their addenda with priorities set around deepening and diversifying trade linkages, developing multimodal transport solutions for traders and logistic players to use Singapore as a value-add hub, as well as partnering countries via a network of digital economy agreements. These initiatives will bolster Singapore's trade and connectivity to the world and enhance competitive advantages for local and global businesses here. As an international bank that serves clients across multiple regions, we recognize these strengths and chose to consolidate our businesses in Singapore for similar reasons. We have operated in Singapore for over 160 years and have seen how Singapore has grown into an economic powerhouse through time, staying resilient amid the geopolitical headwinds and turbulent times. As the first and only bank to be awarded a significantly rooted foreign bank status by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, we are committed to supporting our clients' growth ambitions, both in Singapore and abroad. Our session today will seek to answer important questions, provide actionable insights on key market issues businesses are facing. We're indeed really privileged and honored to have Mr. Chan Chun Sing, Minister for Trade and Industry of Singapore, Dr. Bae Suan Jin, Chairman of the Singapore Economic Development Board, as well as esteemed panelists from IATA, Decathlon, and Express feeders to discuss opportunities from their perspectives and how businesses can continue to build and sustain growth for the long run. This unprecedented period is fast turning into the new normal, and we hope you'll be able to gain insights for your business as you adapt, pivot, and transform for the future. To kickstart today's session, may I invite Mr. Chan Chun Sing, Minister for Trade and Industry, for his opening address. Mr. Chan, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And once again, a very good afternoon to all our guests from Asia in the Singapore time zone. A very good morning to our guests from Europe, and a good evening to our guests from Australia and New Zealand, and if anyone from the US as well. Thank you for this invitation to share with you. When I first received the invitation to speak to this distinguished audience, I was intrigued by the original title of today's sessions. It said, Singapore, the global hub and gateway to ASEAN. Immediately, it raised three questions in my mind. First, the global hub. I wonder if it was appropriate to call ourselves the global hub or a global hub, particularly in a world that threatens to fragment. What is the role of hubs? The second question that came to mind was the descriptor gateway. Is Singapore just a junction that businesses pass through? If so, we should be justifiably concerned. If not, what's our value add? The third question that intrigued me was this. Was it a statement or a question? Singapore's status is not preordained or permanent by any means. So how do we maintain this edge? That we are meeting here today via webcams reflects the changing world that we lived in. Ordinarily, we would be gathered in a conference center or ballroom, mingling and exchanging name cards, where you can feel the lively buzz of the room. Instead, we have all gotten used to doing things a little differently in this COVID world, using digital platforms to engage and interact with one another. We have participants dialing in from all over the world across different time zones without having to leave the comfort of their home. The digital nature of work during COVID has removed geographical and physical boundaries and made a stronger case for digitalizing and virtualizing business models. Now, this has huge implications for any hub location. Why spend money to fly halfway across the world when you can participate from the comfort of your living room? Why post someone overseas when they can essentially do the same job in their home country? The reality is, even prior to COVID, technology has catalyzed companies to review their need for regional hubs. And some have reorganized to have a single global headquarters with several smaller, specialized local nodes. Others have relocated their supply chains closer to their final demand markets. COVID has merely accelerated all these. We are likely to see further reorganization of the global supply and value chains. The changing nature of how companies run their operations and meetings globally raises a more profound question. Is there still a role for hubs in a COVID world? Our short answer is a definite yes. But the roles that hubs play will change and must change. All hubs must fundamentally be able to connect and bridge divides across all dimensions, be it geopolitical, physical, digital, financial, language, and so forth. And in a more fragmented global economy, there will likely not be just a single hub, but a series of key nodes in a larger network with other nodes that must be able to connect seamlessly with one another. For Singapore, we aim to be one of these critical nodes in the global system, even if the world is heading to bifurcation or fragmentation. To achieve this, we prefer not to see ourselves as just a gateway to the region. For me personally, gateway connotes something that is static and a pass-through point junction. We aspire to be more than that. We aspire to be the critical node in global business value chains, production chains, and supply chains, where we add value, serving not just as a location to trade through, where we are the leverage point rather than the pass-through point that enables regional and global businesses to grow exponentially and succeed. By being in Singapore and on the Singapore platform, we add value to the flow of capital, goods, services, and people. And not just physically in Singapore, but from wherever in the world trade may be taking place. This is what we mean by not just trading with Singapore or trading through Singapore, but also trading on Singapore, on the Singapore platform, where we can value add to businesses all around the world, regardless if they are physically in Singapore. Investors choose Singapore not because we have a large domestic market, abundant resources, or that we are cheaper than others. Investors do so because they have a platform for them to operate their business, not just to serve the Singapore market or Asia, but to serve the whole world. Not just to do so physically, but also to do so offline and online digitally. We have a stable government with clear economic plans that we are able to execute and not just to talk about. And this provides confidence for businesses to plan for the long term. We uphold the rule of law and have a clear system of arbitration and clear legal processes, where we provide people with confidence to cite their high-value investments that require a long horizon to achieve positive rates of return. We give confidence to people to house their intellectual property here, knowing that they will be protected and valued. And our rich ecosystem of diverse talent, innovation, transport and digital connectivity will all continue to be reinforced as part of our suite of offering to international businesses. So beyond being a gateway, Singapore aspires to be the key nerve center for businesses, for trade, global supply and value chains, professional services, data, finance, technology, and talent connectivity, and we want to be a critical node in the global network of nodes. This ability to connect as well as to add value is why Singapore has long been an international hub for centuries. This is especially so in today's economic context and in today's geopolitical context, where centrifugal forces are threatening to fragment or bifurcate the global economy. This is why we have attracted over 750 foreign companies to establish their regional headquarters in Singapore, and why others continue to want to set up in Singapore. We want to be the integrator, the connector across different economic systems, different time zones, different geographical areas. Just 2 weeks ago, it was announced that Kajima Corporation would set up its global hub here. This will be its first overseas innovation center and its APAC headquarters. More importantly, a strategic partnership with Singapore to combine industry expertise and research capabilities to drive innovation, sustainability, and resilience for the built environment cluster. Twitter will set up its first Asia-Pac engineering center here and grow its global engineering capabilities in Singapore while improving service availability and reliability. BASF will set up its regional production hub in Singapore, leveraging our connectivity and growing agri-food tech base to expand its agricultural solutions in Asia-Pac. Our hub status was established through sheer hard work and determination of our people by providing a conducive platform for businesses to fulfill their regional and global ambitions. However, we do not take this for granted. We know the competition is stiff. If we do not adapt to the changing nature of how businesses operate, we will be easily bypassed. So we will continue to make Singapore the preferred hub for companies to connect and do business with Asia and the rest of the world. And we will do so in 4 key ways. First, we will remain open for business. We will keep our seaports and airports and supply lines open to the world, even through the depth of the COVID-19 crisis. We are progressively and safely opening up on the air travel front to enable more business and leisure travel experiences. And we will set up more travel bubbles, improve our processes, build confidence, and set new benchmarks for regional travel bubbles so that people can travel with assurance. And we will remain the place where new business ideas, new technologies, and innovations can flourish and grow. And this will be the place where there will be the cross-pollination of ideas across different parts of the world, and we will provide that platform for people from all over the world to do business with us and with each other. Second, we will continue to invest in and enhance our world-class connectivity, both in the physical and non-physical domains. In the physical domains, our new airport, Changi Terminal 5, Tuas Megaport, and regional developments like Sungai Kadut Eco District and the Greater Southern Waterfront projects will continue with some adjustments to the timeline, but we are confident of getting them all done. This also means building deeper links with the world for markets, supplies, technology, and talent to enable businesses to access regional and global opportunities. And we will do this by forging stronger partnerships and connections to major innovation nodes and key demands markets through various initiatives. For example, to improve the trade facilitation and multilateral framework, such as the Joint Ministerial Statement on Supply Chain Connectivity during the COVID-19 crisis, RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, Single Window Connectivity Agreements, the Free Trade Agreements networks, and also a new generation of digital economy agreements. We will also strengthen our connectivity to global talent networks through our Global Innovation Alliance and Network Trade Platform. And we will work closely with the rest of ASEAN partners to provide an integrated market for global investors' consideration. Third, we will accelerate our economic transformation efforts, focusing on productivity, innovation, and upskilling our workers to build capabilities that are hard to replace to enable Singapore to adapt and be more competitive in a COVID world. And we are doing this through various initiatives, such as our industry transformation maps across 20 over sectors, the SME Go Digital effort, Startup Singapore, and the next bound of our Skills Future movement. We will also pursue new frontiers of growth, such as biomedical sciences, agri-food technology, sustainability, clean tech, and many other areas. We want to grow a new generation of global champions to strengthen our local ecosystem and contribute to the economic dynamism of the region. Fourth, we will remain open to top international talent. There has been much scrutiny on this issue recently, and I know that some companies may be anxious. This scrutiny is not unique to Singapore. Every country facing economic slowdown and recession will have elements questioning the balance between locals and foreigners in the job market. So let me be clear. We want the world's best and brightest to be with Team Singapore, to augment our skills and capabilities, competing on our side rather than against us, and ultimately to benefit Singaporeans, not to substitute or to hurt them. We will continue to bring in international talent in a calibrated manner as we have always done, that will enable our businesses to plan for the future, access the best mind, and allow Singaporeans to learn from the best and create more opportunities for Singapore and Singaporeans. Hence, our foreign workers policies will shift increasingly towards quality rather than quantity. And this is not a signal of us turning away from top international talent. But we are serious about discriminatory hiring practices, and we will work with our companies to ensure that they adopt the best practices. All businesses, regardless of size and nationality, will have to play our part in building up the Singaporean workforce and giving Singaporeans a fair shot at the same job opportunities. And we will also like to encourage all our companies to have a diverse workforce and not overly rely on any particular source of labor from any particular foreign country. This is just part of good business continuity practices, and it will also help us in our social integration. And this is how we will continue to keep Singapore relevant as the preferred hub for Singapore companies and international companies. So is there a future for Singapore as a global hub? Yes. And we still see a bright future for us. We'll continue to work closely with many companies to anchor, hub, and grow their businesses out of Singapore with a long-term horizon and in a sustainable manner. More broadly, we endeavor to defy the odds of history against the fate of small states without a natural hinterland and with our roots in diverse racial and religious compositions. We endeavor to build an inclusive, open, and connected society with the world as our hinterland and market. That our identity as a nation state is forward-looking and not backward-looking. That we base it on a set of values of meritocracy, multiracialism, and incorruptibility. And our identity is not one that is backward-looking, defined by race, language, or religion. And we welcome all our friends and fans from the world to have a shared stake and to join this small nation state of ours to defy the odds of history. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that insightful keynote, Minister Chan. It was a pleasure to hear your thoughts today. Let's now come to the panel discussion to discuss some of these events and issues in greater detail. Let me introduce our panelists. As Patrick mentioned, we have Dr. Bae Swan Jin, who is the chairman of the Economic Development Board of Singapore. We have Conrad Clifford, Regional Vice President, International Air Transport Association, or IATA. We have Shmuel Yoskowitz, Chief Executive Officer of Express Feeders, Stéphane Thierry, Regional Chief Financial Officer of Decathlon, and Chow Wan Ton, the Regional Head of Client Coverage Corporate, CCIB, ASEAN and South Asia, with Standard Chartered. All of you, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. Xuan Jin, let me kick things off with you and set the scene here. And I'm going to pick up on something that Minister Chan just said. He said Singapore's role as ASEAN gateway is not preordained or permanent. So how do you see that the pandemic and trade disruptions have impacted Singapore's standing as an ASEAN gateway and business hub?
Thank you. Thanks, Mandy. I think first and foremost, the role that a hub plays will always have to evolve dependent on the needs of both the companies as well as what the countries around us need. It is about staying relevant. And clearly, COVID-19 has accelerated some trends. In some cases, trends that would have taken maybe years to evolve, it's now taken just months. Digitalization is a very, very good example. And one example, one implication of that for companies would be their ability now to deliver services instead of in person. They are able to deliver that digitally. That would mean companies will have to rethink and reorganize themselves to do this. That might mean that some jobs that previously the people, the employees who have to take on these roles were needed to be based in Singapore. Perhaps now they will be decentralized into the respective markets. But in its place may be new digital services that will be organized and centralized and delivered from Singapore. So the point I'm making is simply that the needs are evolving. Singapore's EDB's responsibility, the government of Singapore's responsibility is to constantly make sure that the capabilities and capacities that we develop are in keeping with these needs. And I've mentioned digitalization. There are others. Technical services, for instance, the demand for more sophisticated technical services to support the growing base of infrastructure in Southeast Asia is yet another example that companies will need to grow and expand in Southeast Asia. And that will be a role that Singapore can play simply because such talent, such experience will remain scarce. And as a result, that companies will locate such talents in one location. So again, the point I am making is about making sure that we continue to evolve as the needs of companies evolve.
And we'll talk more about the digitization agenda later on during this panel session. And once again, I'd like to remind all of our audience, those who are joining us today, that we'd love to hear your questions. So do send in your questions via the icon there on the right-hand side of your screen. So Wan Ton, picking up on what Xuan Jin was saying about how businesses need to evolve, you deal with a lot of businesses at Standard Chart. How are you seeing for those businesses things playing out with regards to all the issues that companies have to deal with today? And what can corporates do to try and ensure their recovery and also sustainable growth looking beyond the pandemic?
We don't hear.
From economy perspective. The shutdown, I mean,
sorry, I think we can hear you now. I'm going.
okay.
Okay, we seem to be having a bit of an audio issue with Wan Ton. I'll come back to Wan Ton in just a second while we sort that out. Shmuel, so let me get to you now because, you know, you're the largest independent shipping carrier in the world. You have very broad geographical reach. So you will be seeing how the pandemic is impacting your business from many parts of the world. Tell us a little bit about how that is playing out for your business, and has the pandemic brought into focus any of the pros and cons of being in Singapore for your operational hub?
Yeah, well, for us, as you said, we are not. It's not our regional hub, Singapore. It's our headquarters here. And well, when the pandemic started, it started in Asia, and in some kind of way, you can look at it as lucky for us because we are based here, and we noticed the huge drop in volumes out of China. And since the effects on trade were gradual, we were actually benefiting from the ability to adjust our capacity in other geographies such as Europe and Americas when the effect of the pandemic hit them in April and May. So it helped us to adjust our capacity and somehow control the damages to a certain extent. As for being based in Singapore, I think the biggest advantage is that almost from the get-go, we felt that the government, and especially the MPA, the Maritime and Port Authorities, were trying to do their best to accommodate our needs. We have other regional hubs around the globe, and you could see the distinct difference in attitude of governments towards business. And I think to this, we have to take our hat off to Singapore. I think this is probably the biggest advantage of Singapore. The government has a goodwill, not always succeeding, of course, but that's impossible in this situation. But at least you believe that there is somebody there who is trying to do to help you.
That's really good to focus on the pros and some of the benefits of being based in Singapore. Then, Shmuel, have you experienced any challenges of being based in Singapore?
Comparatively, in this period, no. I mean, it is a challenge, but it's the biggest challenge is probably the travel and people coming to work. But this is true globally. I don't think we've had any issue that was specific to Singapore that any other country managed to solve it better or quicker. I think in general, this period gave us confidence in the fact that our headquarters is here.
So let me come to you then, talking about Decathlon's experience, Stefan. So Singapore is Decathlon's global procurement hub for sourcing and dispatch worldwide. And I believe that Southeast Asia had been your fastest growing region for Decathlon pre-COVID. Has the pandemic changed that?
Actually, not really, in the sense that the growth is still very strong. So what we saw here in Southeast Asia is what we saw also everywhere in the world. Luckily for us in our market, there was, of course, a hard stop when the pandemic started, and basically China went in, shut down basically, and then Europe, and then finally Singapore. When our stores closed here in Malaysia, in Singapore, Thailand, and so on and so on, of course, we saw a very, very sharp drop of our sales. Just to give you an idea, at some point, 80% of our stores in the world were closed. We have 1,650 stores. Now, however, very quickly, first of all, there was a huge shift to the e-commerce, and our e-commerce order literally exploded, and this was actually a big challenge. But it helped us to recover, during the pandemic. Now, following the reopening of pretty much everything, the good news, and this is probably because we are in the sporting goods market, people want to keep healthy, people want to go outdoor, practice sports, and the demand has been very, very strong. So we are actually gradually catching up what we missed in terms of sales during those 8-9 weeks of lockdown everywhere. We are literally catching up, because just after the reopening, people came back to the stores. People continue to order online massively, and so things have been actually pretty good for us, at least in our industry. Again, sporting goods industry, people want to go out and practice sports. I tell you, you can see that probably in Singapore and everywhere.
Well, depending on where you are in the world, certainly being able to go out and do sport is one of the only things that you're allowed to do. I'm thinking of certain states and countries, for example, Victoria here in Australia. So you were talking about how there's been, Stefan, a massive shift to e-commerce, and you could argue, I guess, that COVID has just sped up this process that was inevitable. How much, though, after the pandemic, how much of those e-commerce sales will go back to being in store, do you think? Or will it stay e-commerce?
Yeah. Yeah, so quite a lot will stay in e-commerce. Basically, what we saw globally is that our e-commerce volume were multiplied by 5 pretty much overnight, which again was not easy to handle because we were not, running a store and running e-commerce operation is not exactly the same in terms of process, and we were not quite ready for that. However, we had to adapt very, very quickly. Which we managed to do thanks to our fantastic teams who did really a great job. Now, post-pandemic and when the stores reopened, what we saw is, of course, that the e-commerce volume went down to, I would say, reasonable level, but definitely, and now weeks and months after the end of the lockdown in most countries, we see that basically the volumes remain at a level of, I would say, ×2, almost ×3 compared to before the pandemic. And we believe that this is now a sustainable trend. So e-commerce has become definitely bigger, and even the experience in the stores has changed. And when we talk, it's not just about e-commerce, but digitalization. Here in Singapore, basically we have moved to 100% self-checkout, cashless stores, and actually we have developed an app so that people can basically grab, pay, and go. So grab their products, pay with the app, can scan the product, pay, and go. So basically, what has changed as a customer experience, and even for our teams, that basically the whole concept of queuing up to pay has basically disappeared in our stores. So these are the big changes. And basically, I believe that we have kind of fast forwarded about 2 or 3 years. Actually, we saved 2 to 3 years, or we are today where we will have been in 2 or 3 years from now without this pandemic. So big lessons learned.
Big lessons learned. And actually, if you wanted to talk about silver linings, some of the upsides, and I know it's a horrible word to use, but nonetheless, there are definitely some upsides of what the pandemic has done to businesses around the world. Well, talking of what it's done to businesses, aviation, Conrad, I don't think there's a single person who's joining us today who would argue with the fact that aviation has been savaged by the pandemic. Tell us a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted IATA's business, and has been, as a regional hub in Singapore, has it helped at all mitigate some of the problems?
Yeah, so we've seen a roughly 90% reduction in activity since the beginning of the pandemic, Mandy. And it's had a huge impact for airlines. Initially, we saw massive refunds by people. Later on, we've just seen reductions in activity. The sort of silver lining side of it is that there's been a huge increase in cargo activity. And I think it's now recognized globally that air cargo is an essential part of the value chain for products and services around the world. We've seen passenger aircraft being converted to cargo carriers to take advantage of this. So that's been a little bit of a help for airlines. Otherwise, they've really relied on domestic markets to generate cash because the international markets are pretty well closed. The other thing that we've seen that's been good is where we had reluctance by security authorities to implement touchless digitization, One ID. There's now no doubt at all people want to have a touchless experience at the airport, and so security authorities will promote and assist that. So the use of facial recognition technology, which was being held back in the past by sort of old-fashioned ideas, is now being accelerated so that we can all have a safe touchless experience at the airport.
And if we're able to put in some of those precautions, Conrad, do you believe that passenger travel will eventually go back to the same level that we saw pre-COVID? Or do you think that forever we have changed our mindset about passenger travel?
No, I think it will come back. I think there are a couple of elements. Firstly, in terms of business, it's absolutely essential. People have to travel. Of course, Singapore has always played a leading role in that. And actually, the government now is trying very hard to re-establish green lanes, re-establish both business and leisure travel. On the leisure side, it's going to be a longer slog, I think. It's going to be more difficult to restart. But I have no doubt at all it will restart. We will find a way to do this in a way that's safe, that doesn't lead to any transmission. So we will get back to to where we were before, but it's going to be an uphill battle.
And one of the reasons why I asked that question, Conrad, about whether or not our mindsets have changed forever is because now, of course, and some of our guests a moment ago were also alluding to this, we can work from home. Here we are today talking to each other via a webinar from different parts of the world, whereas in the past, of course, we'd have to get on a plane and go and sit in a big conference room together. So I wonder whether or not that might impact travel going forward as well. I would love to hear what our audience thinks about some of these issues. Oh, and we have One Ton back as well. So before we get to our live poll, One Ton, can you hear us okay? Okay, unfortunately, we can't hear One Ton just yet. We'll just try and fix that once again. So let's do a live poll now. So this is your opportunity in the audience to be able to do the live poll. You can see there on the side of your screen where it says a new poll is live. Just click on the icon there and you'll be able to see the question. Let me read it out to you. What continues to attract you to Singapore as a hub for your business? Free trade agreements, financial and political stability, something that Minister Chan talked a lot about, the prominent position as Asia's financial hub, future-ready digital infrastructure, or availability of talent pool. Now, originally, we also had the all of the above here, but we've taken that away to make you really think very carefully about what it is that continues to attract you to Singapore as a hub for your business. So please do vote now. All you need to do is just click on one of those answers, and then in just a couple of seconds' time, we'll be able to see what the response is. So in the meantime, getting back to you, Swan Jin, if you had to answer that, what do you think? What do you think most people who are on the webinar today are going to answer?
Well, firstly, I think we should recognize that the importance or the premium on trust has grown because of COVID-19 and all the uncertainties that's happening around us. Something as basic as the trust in the quality of the healthcare system is critical. The belief that the government is there to help businesses. For instance, in Singapore, the provision of wage support was critical for ensuring that many businesses were able to keep afloat, particularly in the early months of COVID-19, where there was a lot of uncertainty about how long this will last, the depth of the economic impact, and so on and so forth. You know, Singapore dipped into our reserves. We put in close to $100 billion, which is about 20% of, equivalent to about 20% of the GDP, to support businesses, workers, and households. So I think that's very important, and that's an advantage of being in Singapore. But more importantly, it's also the availability of opportunities around us. I'm actually very sanguine and optimistic about what the post-COVID world will open up for Singapore. Whether it's a reconfiguration of supply chains, you know, as companies start to look at building resilience, and we call that the China Plus One strategy, whether it's the new roles of being a hub, digitalization, innovation, and so on and so forth.
So we're starting to get the live poll results in. So let's take a look, everyone. We've got financial and political stability far outweighing the others as the response for what it continues to attract our audience to Singapore as a business hub. After that comes prominent position as Asia's financial hub. Then we have future-ready digital infrastructure, availability of talent pool, and the last one was free trade agreements. So let me get the response then from our other panelists. Shmuel, you first. Are you surprised at all, or is that exactly what you would have expected in terms of a response? And what's your thought?
Well, probably 3 months ago, in a different situation in Hong Kong, probably the replies would have been different. But currently, I think, yeah, it's not very surprising. For us as a company and as a shipping company, and I think for every logistic company, the consideration for Singapore as a regional or global is actually the platform. Over the past 15, 20 years, Singapore has built probably the best platform When I say platform, I mean the many kinds of all you need to do in shipping you have in Singapore. So we have the bank and the insurance company and the ship owners and the brokers and the operators, and through this we have the talent pool. So it makes our life easy. I don't think there is any other city currently in the world, for a container shipping company at least, that offers this. And for us, I think this is the best thing about being here.
What about you, Stefan? What are your thoughts on the poll? Stefan, I think you're muted. If you could just take yourself off mute, then we can hear you. Please,
okay now.
Thank you.
Yes. So basically, I voted the same as a majority. Financial and political stability indeed might have been a bit different a few months ago, but still it's very important. What is important here, what we like in Decathlon, is also the clear commitment of the government regarding support to companies who come here, who innovate, who invest. You all probably know that there are very clear incentives also given by the government to attract companies and so on. And this has been very, I would say, stable over the years. We have also a good visibility for the future where this is all going, and a clear commitment from the government. So it helps. Number two, I would say, even if it has quite a low rating here, but the availability of talent pool, there are many talented Singaporeans, PR and foreigners living here in Singapore. We understand that there are some shifts currently given the current situation, but as long as it's possible, to find those people or bring those people to Singapore who really bring added value through their roles and so on, it will be very, very important, because even when you digitize everything and so on, at the end of the day you still need quite a number of people to run a business, especially in retail, and the quality of those people is really a big plus. So Singapore has in the region definitely the best pool of talent, small but very good.
And certainly, Stefan, you and Shmuel referred to what's been happening in Hong Kong and the instability and issues that they're grappling with there, which no doubt has made a number of businesses perhaps look more keenly at Singapore. So we've now got Wan Ton back. Wan Ton, if you could just take yourself off mute, we'll bring you back into the conversation. Great to have you with us once again. Talk to us a little bit about some of the emerging trends that you've been seeing among your clients. What kind of things they've been grappling with as challenges, and what kind of things they're looking for in terms of wanting to tap into Singapore as being the gateway to ASEAN.
A couple of things. Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Okay, good. Certainly, we are seeing a lot of clients post-pandemic and feeling that they need to make a lot of changes, and they are really looking to diversify the markets. And clearly, the ASEAN market is one of the key regions that they're looking at, given the fact that there are over 650 million population here, rising middle class, and of course, a very vibrant e-commerce economy. At the same time, investors are also looking at ASEAN not just purely from an investment perspective as an end destination market, but they're also looking at ASEAN as potentially a market where they could look at diversifying their supply chain, because with the pandemic and the lockdown that has affected international trade in a big way, they want to ensure that going forward, there's going to be a much more resilient supply chain in place. So we do see some companies looking to shift from a just-in-time kind of production to a just-in-case model, because they do recognize that cost of production and time to market is not the only consideration, but actually certainty of supply is actually important. And when they look at expanding into ASEAN, very often we still see a lot of companies looking to set up a hub in Singapore, for the very fact that Singapore is an international financial. They do need to make sure that they have got banking arrangement, financing put in place, and they also want to make sure that they're able to manage their risk. So take, for example, managing currency risk, the foreign exchange exposure. And Singapore is one of the largest foreign exchange market in Asia Pacific.
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the why they are looking to set up in Singapore. So I do see a lot of companies see Singapore as very much connecting the world to the Asia Pacific and to the ASEAN region, because we do have the stable and a trusted legal framework, as mentioned by Minister earlier on. And from Standard Chartered perspective, we play a key role in supporting that connectivity, because not only Singapore is our global operational headquarters and our innovation hub, but we are present in 10 markets within ASEAN. So we understand and we are able to help a lot of the clients to do the navigation within the.
And so many of the processes that you just outlined there, Wan Ton, are being aided by digitization. And I know that we talk about the digital divide and it has become a cliche, but you can't be left behind now. So how are you helping at the bank make sure that your clients are not left behind? In other words, how are you smoothing out their digital transition?
Yeah, so clearly the whole pandemic has certainly accelerated the whole digital transformation. And with Standard Chartered having announced that we are investing close to about 1.6 billion with the big focus on digital, including digital payment and collections, we are actually able to help a lot of clients who have to actually change the way of doing the business during this period. So many of them are looking at e-commerce in a much bigger way. When they do that, they actually would need banks to be able to support them to do, whether it's online collection or collection via the API, the app, or using API, as a way of doing it. So clearly, we are investing in a big way from a cash payments and collection perspective. In addition to that, we as a bank are also actively participating in a lot of the industry initiative. I think some of us would have heard about the network trade platform that Singapore had put in place. And clearly, we are one of the banks that have been working with MAS, working with the Singapore Customs to try to ensure that we are able to help support the establishment of a one-stop trade platform, digital platform. And there's also the Contour, which is another initiative, which is a blockchain initiative. Again, this is to try to make sure that there's a way to digitally create and approve some of the letters of credit. So we have been championing it and pioneer and test out that with a number of our clients, including one of the recent this year when we did the first RMB denominated letters of credit issuance. So clearly we are supporting our clients in a lot of the digital initiative in both the payments collections as well as the finance.
So Swan Jin, you were talking about how the Singapore government is also championing the digitization agenda. What do you think you can do better? What can you do more on that front to help the corporates who are wanting to either set up shop in Singapore or use you as a regional hub and base?
Maybe I'll address it from three perspectives. I think firstly is about making sure we continue to invest in the connectivity, in the digital connectivity internationally, whether it's through new investments in submarine cables and so on and so forth. But equally important domestically, and here I'm really talking about 5G infrastructure. I don't think we all talk about the ease of working from home and so on and so forth. It assumes that bandwidth is plentiful. And this will differentiate jurisdictions that continue to invest in the cutting edge of connectivity. So that's first. The second would be to ensure that we invest in the capabilities, we attract the very best talents who are pushing the boundaries in terms of digital technologies. And this is where we have been very fortunate in that the tech giants, whether it's from the US, whether it's from China, whether it's from Southeast Asia, are building up their engineering teams in Singapore. And it's a virtuous cycle. Some of these very best, including Singaporeans who are working in the Bay Area, they are attracted to big challenges. They want to work on very important projects and can move the needle. So the companies, of course, many of these tech giants are addressing some of these big challenges. So it's a virtuous cycle, and we've been able to do that and investing in our universities to build up that capacity and capability. The final point then is about how do we help to make sure that we don't have workers who are left behind, we don't have firms that are left behind. And that's also a very important part of what the government needs to do in our digitalization agenda, helping the SMEs, helping PMETs who may have lost their jobs to reskill to be much more digitally confident so that they can take on new roles and new opportunities.
And that's incredibly important, isn't it? Because unfortunately, the time it takes to upskill or reskill often takes longer than the evolution and the progress that we're seeing on the digitization, automation, and robotics front. But that's a different discussion for a different day. Conrad, let me come to you, because IATA has been in Singapore since the 1960s. I hope I'm not incorrect with that, but you've been there for a very, very long time. You've seen a lot change over that time.
Yes.
So I was please go ahead with that thought, and I'll ask my question afterwards.
Yeah, we started here in 1969 with a two-man office. There was a national office, and then you move forward to 2017, and we established one of 4 global delivery centers in Singapore, employing about 150 people. And covering 37 countries. So there's been a huge development over those intervening years. I guess the big game changer was probably 2008, when we became part of the International Organization Development Scheme with the EDB. And that was really a chance to work together with government, try to develop our hub further. Last year we settled about $70 billion worth of payments through Singapore. So to answer the poll from earlier, for us, it's absolutely the financial center, financial security, and political stability that win for Singapore. We have to keep innovating. So we've been developing a new payment type. And we've actually been working with Stanchar quite extensively on this, because very often we get European solutions, American solutions, they work in those big markets. But here in Asia-Pac or in ASEAN, we need to tailor our solution to better suit ASEAN countries' financial requirements, compliance, etc. So we've been working with Standard Chartered on that, and it's been a big success. So we're continuing to evolve really in the face of a lot of digital disruption, and we're doing well.
So having been in Singapore, Conrad, for so long, and having watched over those decades Singapore move up the value chain, how do the benefits that you see outweigh some of the downsides, such as the higher cost compared to some of the other ASEAN countries as a base?
Well, I think, we tend to look every 5 years or so at Singapore, and we look at whether we should be considering other locations like Hong Kong or Kuala Lumpur or Bangkok. But fundamentally, what Singapore has, it has stability. It has a rule of law that's a model for the region. And the ability to move people in and out, finance in and out, smoothly and quickly is we don't see it anywhere else. So far Singapore always wins, hands down. I mean, it's quite an expensive location, but again, the grants that we've received over the years from the EDB have helped to level the playing field, and we're very grateful for that. And so actually, if you're going to do business in ASEAN, this is the gateway. It really is.
I guess you get what you pay for, don't you? And with all the benefits that we were just talking about in the poll.
We have about 26 nationalities and about 65% Singaporean. And this is another thing. We find that the Singaporean workforce really committed, highly educated, very efficient. So again, there's a benefit there.
Shmuel, let's get back to the digitization subject. And Wan Ton was talking about digitization and things like supply chains and logistics, which is really your arena, totally your wheelhouse. How has it helped in your business with things like supply chains and logistics? And what do you also see as something that could be done better, perhaps?
Locally here in Singapore, First of all, I think the pandemic accelerated, as Stefan said, our development. We've had a business transformation program running for a bit more than 2 years. And I think the pandemic accelerated it probably by another 2 years. One in mainly, I think, in the how our employees are looking at it and how our customer and suppliers understand the necessity. So it makes driving the change easier. I think this is the silver lining of the sort for us in this pandemic. As for the drive, I have one comment on what Swanjin said, and this is, for us at least, we are not a Google or a Microsoft. We find it quite difficult to attract and recruit developers in Singapore. And actually, we had to take a decision and to actually outsource it to other countries because we simply struggle to recruit talent in this. This is the
Why?
only. Excuse me?
Why?
I think from speaking to others, I think two folds. One is a basic macro issue in Singapore, which I think there is a shortage, speaking to other people in other industry. And the second, again, we are a shipping company, and when we approach IT professionals, we are probably not at the top of their list when they are looking at innovation or thinking of innovation. I think it's better to have on their CV somebody else rather than express feeders, to be honest. And I think, so we have a general shortage, and we are probably not at the top of the list, and that's why we have a challenge.
What, you feel that shipping's not as sexy as some other areas, perhaps?
Absolutely.
We'll have to change that. We'll have to change that. The world go round.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Stefan, before we get to the audience Q&A, Stefan, I'll finish on you. We were talking about silver linings. What else do you feel is the silver lining from the pandemic, as horrible and disruptive as it has been? What's your key takeaway?
Well, generally speaking, what we have seen in our business and with our teams actually is the ability of our people, and I'm sure it's the same in many companies, to adapt to the new situation, to find solutions, whether it's through digitalization or sometimes in very simple manual ways. Sometimes simplicity helps solving very complicated issues created by this kind of pandemic. And yeah, for me, a silver lining is is creativity I've seen in the business world and even outside of the business world, during this pandemic. And I think under those conditions, companies and management teams have learned to trust their team members. Because many people in companies have fantastic ideas, are able to implement them, and so really, I think this is also a big lesson for everyone, that trust your teams, because sometimes they know how to solve the problem much better than you do as a team leader or CEO or CFO. So I'm very positive about this, I must say.
And it's good to end the panel discussion on a positive note. I'd like to now start asking some of the questions that have been coming in from the audience. And these are really good questions and also very relevant to what we've been discussing. So Conrad, you and I were just talking about the higher cost base in Singapore, but you felt it was worth it. So Swanjin, this is a question for you then. A question from the audience: how will Singapore compete against other markets as an FDI investment when it's a costlier base?
I think firstly, we don't want to play the same game of being a value-added location only. We really want to focus about being a location that creates value for firms. And that really means moving away from an investment-driven economic growth model to an innovation-led economic growth model. What does that mean? That means we are in the business of working with companies that can create new products, new services, and in some instances, really helping large corporations create new businesses from Singapore. And the opportunity is now because of the growth of the Asian consumer market, the Asian enterprise market, the Asian infrastructure market. So then there are many unmet needs around us, and these unmet needs are crying for innovative solutions. And this is the opportunity for Singapore firms, international firms based in Singapore. And actually, this would be my same reply to another question further down that talks about how we can help Singapore companies go to the region. This is actually, again, a great opportunity because the diversification of supply chains doesn't only mean companies moving factories from China to Southeast Asia. It also means companies seeking to have additional suppliers to really introduce resilience to their supply base. And this will open up opportunities for Singapore SMEs. I talked about the rising consumer demand from the middle class in Southeast Asia. There are many, many great entrepreneurs in the F&B and retail scene in Singapore that really ought to do a lot more to go out to the region, to Jakarta, to Ho Chi Minh, to Bangkok, and grow their business. So that's yet another example. And of course, the digital economy is tailor-made for Singapore because of the very exciting and vibrant startup ecosystem that we have here.
And for the benefit of our audience, Swan Jin, you were just referring to that question about how Singapore can ensure that its own local businesses also stand a chance of expanding globally and not just the MNCs who've begun basing themselves in Singapore. So thank you for that. I have a question coming in here as well from the audience. Wanton, I'm going to throw this one to you because it's about banks. And it's banks will see a major rise in NPLs within SMEs whilst we embrace new technologies like digitalization. Fixing the balance sheets of the banks is also important so that they can lend more. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so clearly during the pandemic, we have seen some corporates going through some challenging period, and we have been very supportive through some of the government schemes as well, in terms of providing, financing, providing liquidity during this period, and in some cases, even looking at, moratoriums and things like that, and working, and we are pretty much the conduit for a lot of the government scheme. So clearly, this is the period that the bank will have to work through with the corporates, but we do believe that at the end of the day, some of these, we look at relationship from a long-term perspective. So while corporates go through cycles, and this pandemic, clearly, I think many of us and many of the industries and the different corporates are going through cycles, but we do believe in supporting client in the long term, such that, we are able to all come out a lot stronger post the pandemic situation. And during this period, I think there are always still opportunities that we are looking to support many of our clients, because in a crisis, while there are challenges, I'd like to think that there are also opportunities, and we work closely with our clients to support our clients during this period as well.
Great. And this is a great question, I think, for you, Stefan, as someone who faces the consumer at Decathlon. This question is, if Singapore does not just wish to be a gateway, its own citizens must be attractive consumers, as well as the MNCs who will base their businesses here. What do you think makes Singaporean consumers attractive to many types of industries? What's the Decathlon experience?
Well, first of all, actually, in our industry, I think Singaporeans are among the most sporty people in the region. So they do practice a lot. So really, when it comes to our industry, it's fantastic to be here. Then I would say the ability to adapt to new ways of retail. For example, in our case, when we introduce cashless stores, self checkout, and now even this app I was mentioning earlier, where basically you just scan and go, you scan your product and you grab it, you scan it, and you pay and go, and so on. All these new technologies are actually accepted by Singaporean consumers very fast. I think they are very open and keen on new technologies and so on. This is also supported very much by the government, who really pushes a lot these kind of new technologies and of people adopting them. So very interesting, and this is in a way, less traditional than in other markets in the region. So you can test in Singapore a lot of things, deploy them here first, and then deploy them in the region. It's what we are doing with a few of our, I would say, IT products or IT solutions to support retail. Is really to develop them and test them in Singapore, and then after that roll out in the region, not just ASEAN, but even East Asia, like Korea, Japan, and so on.
So the next follow-up question to what you're saying, Stefan, is to you once again, Swan Jin. E-commerce has naturally exploded through necessity during the pandemic. So the question from the audience is, which sectors are seeing growth during this period other than the obvious ones such as e-commerce?
So it's not just e-commerce, it's the internet economy as a whole, right? We are talking about online entertainment, online games, all these digital services are doing very well. Another area that is doing very well would be healthcare and healthcare-related industries. So for the obvious would be the diagnostics, vaccines, producers of masks and PPE and so on and so forth. So healthcare sector is also doing very well right now. We have actually seen an uptick in the semiconductor sector and the related industries. Part of it has to do with 5G, but it's also to do with, I suppose, the fact that all of us have to work from home and the increased demand in many of these communication devices that has generated. So we have also seen an uptick in semiconductor, industrial equipment, and so on and so forth. Food would be another area. Food and food manufacturing will be another area. This is partly driven by the desire of many countries to want to shorten the supply chain for food and build greater resilience. Singapore, for instance, have our 30 by 30. So that would yet be another area. So there are opportunities. Different sectors are experiencing different fortunes. And I think for companies that are in an unfortunate position of being in a segment where the demand is sharply down, they will have to think about pivoting.
So we've got another question here, and I'm going to throw this one to both Shmuel and Conrad, if you can perhaps answer this one. What will our competitive edge be? And when they say our, I'm assuming what will Singapore's competitive edge be? And the rest of ASEAN is also trying to position themselves as an innovative hub. Will the regulatory framework and talent pool be good enough as differentiating factors? Conrad, what do you think?
I think definitely, and but it's something that Singapore can't be complacent about, and what I heard from the minister was good, because we need to be able to continue to have a financial system, for example, that fosters innovation, fosters new financial products. And exactly again, as Stefan was saying, if we can test bed new apps, new financial apps in Singapore, that's really important. So I do think that Singapore needs to think carefully about not only maintaining what it's built so far, which is fantastic, but also maintaining the infrastructure and compliance that permits exploration, innovation, experimentation.
Competitive edges. Shmuel?
I didn't hear you, sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. So the question, what is the competitive edge in Singapore when the rest of ASEAN is also trying to position themselves as an innovative hub?
Yeah, I think that, as Conrad said, the base is the governmental and financial stability. And but I think how to take it forward is and how to keep this advantage. I'll give you an example. I think 2 weeks ago, we already had a session of a few CEOs of shipping companies with the MPA, thinking about the post-COVID world and how Singapore will keep its edge. And I doubt there is any other country that is already thinking of how to lay down the foundation and accelerate its advantage after the pandemic. Everybody is busy maintaining the day-to-day. And in Singapore, you have a government, a forward-thinking government that actually always look what will be in 3 to 5 years. And I think if Singapore will keep this mentality and way of doing, of thinking, this advantage will be kept.
So we're just about to finish up, but I'd like to just quickly address a couple more of the questions to make sure that all of the audience feels that they're getting their questions answered. So Swan Jin, once again to you, this is a question with regards to China. China is looking at its domestic market to continue growing their country as COVID-19 is continuing to restrict air travel and movement. So would developing ASEAN as a market now be a high priority for businesses in Singapore?
Yeah, from the EDB perspective, from the government's perspective, forging greater linkages with Southeast Asia has been a priority for the last 5 years. We've been encouraging businesses to invest and expand into Southeast Asia. Likewise, we have been providing a lot of support for young Singaporeans in particular to gain work experiences, even short-term attachments in the Southeast Asia arena. So it has been a priority. Indonesia, for instance, in our view, has a great promise in the coming years. Mandy, if you don't mind, I just want to also add one more comment to this point about Singapore's competitive edge, even as the rest of ASEAN position themselves as innovative. I mean, firstly, I think a bigger pie is good for everyone. So it'd be great if other ASEAN countries are also able to power their innovation engine. But there's one advantage that is really not of Singapore's making, but maybe it's a network effect. And that has to do with Singapore as a location for wealth management. The latest trend, of course, would be the emergence of family offices in Singapore, not just Asian family offices as Asia gets more affluent and wealthy, but also branches of European and US family offices. Now, what this means is that actually we intend to connect all these private capital to the entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial pursuits in Singapore, because I think this will be yet another secret sauce that can give Singapore innovation an advantage. And this is, again, as I said, this is not something that Singapore has generated or we have created, but it's part of the network effect. Success somewhere else, now we can connect the dots, and hopefully this will foment success on another front.
Really quickly, just in 30 seconds or less, if you may, Swan Jin, what is the prospect for greater cross-border integration, for example, with Johor or Riau?
We are basically reimagining and revisiting what this could look like. In Batam, for instance, it used to be about manufacturing. The supply chain diversification from China will give it a new life. But equally important, we are focusing on developing a digital economy in Nongsa. It will provide the sort of workforce that Shmuel talked about earlier. There are 250 million in Indonesia. If you just imagine that 50,000 Indonesians who are working in the tech industry are located in Batam, it will be a big boost for the Singapore tech sector. So we are definitely focusing on reimagining what the Riau Islands and Singapore and Johor could look like.
And as you say, making shipping an attractive place for the youngsters to go and work and help Shmuel out. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for participating today. Thank you to the audience for all of your questions. They were very insightful, and we really appreciate your participation. Before we conclude, you can see there on your screen a QR code. Now, why do you have this QR code? That's so that you can provide some feedback for today's webcast. All you need to do is scan the QR code, or you can just click on the link after the webcast has ended. Feedback is always welcome. It always makes these sessions bigger and better. It helps curate them to help you the most. But before we go, finally, the latest chapter in the Standard Chartered brand story. This is a trade-focused film, and we're very lucky to be able to see this because it's been directed by Mark Waring. He's the stop animation expert at the heart of Wes Anderson's Oscar-nominated films Isle of Dogs and Fantastic Mr. Fox. So the film tells the story of two villagers with their perfectly good produce and how they managed to create something even better when they decided to exchange what they have. And of course, this reinforces Standard Chartered's commitment to driving global trade, especially in what is, everyone knows, a very difficult environment right now. It's, of course, all about keeping trade flowing and, as Standard Chartered's catch cry goes, being here for good. So please do enjoy the video, and thank you once again for participating today. Thank you very much to our panelists as well. Have a great day.
The world feels smaller when we're separated. And that's not good enough. We believe the world is a better place when we exchange what we have. That's why we've been driving global trade for over 160 years. And we continue to do so, even in these uncertain times. Because we're not here for good enough. We're Standard Chartered, and we're here for good.